She sends one final text to her friend just after 2 in the morning, laughing about the night they've just shared, celebrating the promise of a brand new year. Helen is finally happy again, finally free, finally building the life she deserves with someone who treats her with kindness. What you're about to hear is the true story of Rhys Hancock, a respected head teacher and father of 3, who transformed from a pillar of his community into a cold-blooded killer. And when you hear what he did in the minutes before he dialed 999 to confess, you'll understand why this case still haunts everyone who came into contact with it. Because the question that lingers isn't just how someone could do this, it's how many warning signs were missed, and whether Helen's death could have been prevented. To the outside world, Rhys Hancock appears to be exactly the kind of man you'd want in charge of vulnerable children. At 40 years old, he serves as head teacher at Stanton Vale School in Long Eaton, a special educational needs school where he works with some of the most challenging and fragile young people in Derbyshire. Colleagues describe him as dedicated, patient, and deeply committed to his students. Parents trust him. The local education authority respects him. He has built a career on being the person who steps in when others step back, who sees potential in children that society has written off. But inside his home on New Zealand Lane in Duffield, a very different version of Rhys Hancock exists. This is the man his wife Helen knows, the man who cannot tolerate disagreement, who interprets independence as betrayal, who believes that marriage gives him ownership rather than partnership. Friends who visit the house notice the tension, the way Helen seems to measure her words carefully, the way Rhys's mood can shift from charming to cold in seconds. They see a man who needs to know where his wife is at all times, who questions her friendships, who makes decisions about their family without consulting her. Rhys grows up in a working-class family and builds his professional success through genuine hard work and determination. Those who know him in his early years remember someone ambitious, someone who wants to make a difference. He meets Helen while they're both young, and they marry with what seems like genuine affection and shared dreams. They have 3 children together, 2 sons and a daughter, and from the outside, they look like a family that has everything going for them. A nice home in a desirable village, stable careers, healthy children. But marriages are not lived on the outside. They're lived in the small moments, the daily negotiations, the 1,000 tiny interactions that either build trust or erode it. And in the Hancock household, something is eroding. Helen begins to change, to withdraw, to seem less like the vibrant woman her friends remember. When they ask if everything is all right, she offers reassurances that sound rehearsed. She mentions arguments, describes them as normal marital stress, but there's something in her eyes that suggests the truth is more complicated. Helen, she has started using her maiden name again, a small but significant act of reclaiming her identity. She was 39 years old when she died, and by all accounts, the final months of her life are the happiest she has known in years. Friends describe her as beautiful, vibrant, outgoing, someone who loves life and lives it fully. She is a physical education teacher at Fountains High School in Burton, upon Trent, Staffordshire, where students adore her energy and enthusiasm. She makes exercise fun, makes young people believe in their own capabilities, and brings the same warmth to her classroom that she brings to every other part of her life. But Helen's journey to this happiness has been long and painful. For years, she has been trapped in a marriage that slowly suffocates her spirit. Friends watch her change during those years, watch the light dim in her eyes, watch her become more careful, more guarded, more afraid. They see bruises she explains away. They hear arguments through walls. They notice how she checks her phone constantly, how she always seems to be accounting for her time, how she flinches at unexpected sounds. These are the signs of someone living under control, someone whose home has become a place of fear rather than safety. Helen is a mother to 3 young children, 2 sons aged 9 and 3, and a daughter aged 4. Everything she does, every decision she makes about her marriage, is filtered through the lens of protecting them. She stays longer than she should because she wants them to have a father in their lives. She tries to make the relationship work because she believes, as so many victims of domestic abuse believe, that if she can just be better, calmer, more understanding, then maybe the violence will stop. She attends therapy. She reads books about communication. She bends herself into impossible shapes trying to fix something that was never her responsibility to fix. But by mid-year 2019, Helen reaches a breaking point. She realizes that staying is not protecting her children. It's teaching them that this is what love looks like. She realizes that she deserves better, that her children deserve to see their mother happy and whole, so she asks Rhys to leave. It's not the first time they've separated. Friends mention that the marriage has nearly ended on 4 previous occasions, including once in the year 2016, when they got as far as court proceedings before reconciling. But this time feels different. This time, Helen is determined not to go back. The separation is messy and painful, as separations always are when one person wants to leave and the other wants to maintain control. Rhys does not move out gracefully. There are arguments, confrontations, incidents that require police intervention. In October, the year 2019, he throws something at Helen with enough force to cause a visible injury, and police place him on bail. Helen knows she is in danger. She has called 999 before. She has reached out for help. But the system that is supposed to protect her operates in frustratingly slow and inadequate ways. Bail conditions are imposed, but monitoring is minimal. Risk assessments are conducted, but they fail to capture the full extent of the threat. Despite the fear, despite the ongoing stress of managing a separation from a man who refuses to accept it, Helen begins to rebuild her life. She reconnects with friends she has lost touch with during the marriage. She takes up new hobbies. She climbs Mount Snowdon for the first time, an achievement that fills her with pride and joy. She posts photos on social media that show a woman rediscovering herself, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. Her friend, Diana McGrath, who has known her for 20 years, says that Helen experiences a whole new lease of life in those final 6 months. She is finally picking herself back up again. And then Helen meets Martin Griffiths. He is 48 years old, a marketing and brand strategist who runs his own company, a father of 2 who has recently separated from his wife of 15 years. They meet through mutual friends, and there is an immediate connection. 2 people who have both been through difficult relationships, who understand the courage it takes to start over, who are ready to build something healthier and kinder. Martin is gentle where Rhys was controlling. He is supportive where Rhys was critical. He makes Helen laugh, makes her feel valued, makes her believe that she deserves good things. Their relationship develops slowly and carefully. Helen is cautious about introducing a new partner to her children, conscious of protecting them from any more upheaval. But by late December, the year 2019, she is ready to take that step. She spends Christmas Day with her children at her sister's house, and everyone later describes it as the best Christmas they can remember. Helen is relaxed, joyful, fully present in a way she hasn't been for years. Her family sees the change in her and feels hopeful that she is finally free, finally safe, finally able to live without fear. On New Year's Eve, Helen and Martin join friends for a celebration. They go to the pub, they laugh, they toast the arrival of the year 2020 with genuine optimism about what the year might bring. Just after 2 in the morning, they leave their friend's house and return to Helen's home on New Zealand Lane. They are tired, happy, looking forward to sleeping in and starting the new year slowly. Helen sends a final text to her friend Hannah Ruggins, something light and affectionate about the evening they've shared. It's the last message she will ever send. What Helen doesn't know, what she cannot possibly know, is that Rhys has spent the past 5 days consumed with rage about her new relationship. She doesn't know that he has been driving past Martin's house, taking photographs, interrogating mutual acquaintances. She doesn't know that he has told his mother he wants to kill them both. She doesn't know that at this very moment, he is driving toward her house with 2 knives, that he has already accepted the consequences of what he's about to do, that he has moved past anger into something far more dangerous, cold, calculated determination. The house on New Zealand Lane sits quiet in the darkness of early January morning. It's the kind of street where people know their neighbors, where children play safely, where nothing truly terrible is supposed to happen. Inside house number 32, Helen and Martin have been asleep for perhaps an hour when Rhys Hancock arrives. He parks his car nearby, not directly in front of the house. Even now, he is thinking tactically, thinking about how this will look, how to minimize the chance of being seen before he's ready. He walks to the back of the property, testing the door handle, and finds it unlocked. Helen has always been trusting, perhaps too trusting, and tonight, that trust becomes a fatal vulnerability. Rhys enters through the back door so quietly that neither Helen nor Martin wakes. He knows this house intimately. He lived here for years, raised his children here, knows every creak of every floorboard. He moves through the ground floor and begins climbing the stairs, 2 kitchen knives in his hands. One is an 18-centimeter chef's knife, the kind you'd use for chopping vegetables. The other is longer, 32 centimeters, with a blade designed for slicing meat. He has chosen these weapons deliberately, taken them from his mother's kitchen because he knows they will be effective, knows they will do the job he has come here to do. The bedroom door is open. Helen and Martin are in bed, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that they have only seconds left to live. What happens next unfolds with such speed and violence that neither victim has any real chance to defend themselves. Rhys attacks with a fury that seems almost inhuman in its intensity, stabbing again and again and again, targeting vital areas, ensuring that there can be no survival, no recovery, no chance for anyone to call for help. Helen receives 66 separate injuries. 66 times, Rhys drives a blade into her body, into her chest, her abdomen, her back, her arms, her hands. Some of these wounds are defensive, evidence that she tried to protect herself, tried to push him away, tried to survive, but most are offensive, deliberate, intended to kill. The force he uses is so extreme that on at least one occasion, the knife's handle penetrates her body, along with the blade, leaving an imprint in her flesh. Forensic pathologists will later testify that they have rarely seen this level of violence in a domestic homicide. This is not a crime of passion, not a moment of lost control. This is sustained, purposeful destruction. Martin suffers 37 injuries, concentrated on his face, neck, torso, and legs. He tries to fight back, tries to protect Helen, tries to do something, anything, to stop what is happening. But he is disoriented, waking from sleep into a nightmare, facing an attacker who has the advantage of surprise and the commitment of someone who has already accepted that this night will end with him in prison. One of the wounds severs Martin's jugular vein, and he begins bleeding out rapidly. Even if paramedics had been called immediately, even if they had been standing outside the door, he would likely not have survived. The attack lasts somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, though time becomes meaningless in moments of such extreme violence. When it's over, when Rhys finally stops stabbing, the bedroom looks like something from a horror film. Blood covers the walls, the floor, the bed, the ceiling. Both victims have collapsed onto the floor, Helen with her head resting on Martin's lap in a final, tragic intimacy. The knives, one of them still embedded in Martin's neck, lie nearby. And Rhys Hancock, covered in blood from head to foot, walks calmly downstairs and out of the house. At 4:11 in the morning, Denise Hancock calls 999. She has found her mobile phone, the one Rhys tried to hide from her, and she is frantic, terrified, desperate to undo what she knows her son is about to do. She tells the operator that her son has taken 2 knives and gone to his estranged wife's house. She says he found out about another man on Friday night. She begs them to send someone quickly. The operator tries to persuade her to call Helen directly, to warn her, but Denise has no idea what she would say, how she could possibly explain. She doesn't have Helen's number readily available. She is paralyzed by the horror of what is unfolding. The operator immediately dispatches police to New Zealand Lane, but they are already too late. At 4:26 in the morning, a second 999 call comes in, this time from Rhys himself. His voice is calm, almost eerily so, as he tells the operator, "I have just stabbed them. There is blood everywhere." He provides his location, confirms that he is still at the scene, makes no attempt to flee or hide what he has done. When the operator asks if the victims are breathing, he says he doesn't know, doesn't seem particularly concerned about finding out. He has done what he came to do, and now he is simply waiting for the consequences to arrive. Police reach the house at 4:28 in the morning, just 2 minutes after Rhys's call. They find him standing outside, his clothing soaked in blood, his hands red, his face spattered with evidence of what he has done. When an officer approaches and asks what has happened, Rhys responds with chilling matter-of-factness, "I'm hardly going to deny it. Look at me." There is no remorse in his voice, no horror at what he has done, no apparent recognition that he has just destroyed multiple families and left 3 young children without a mother. He is arrested immediately and placed in handcuffs, offering no resistance. Inside the house, other officers find a scene that will haunt them for the rest of their careers. They rush upstairs to the bedroom and discover Helen and Martin exactly as Rhys left them. Martin is clearly deceased, his injuries too severe for any intervention. But Helen still has a pulse, faint and irregular, and the officers immediately begin emergency first aid. They call for paramedics, start CPR, use a defibrillator, do everything in their power to keep her alive. For 15 desperate minutes, they fight to save her, but the damage is too extensive, the blood loss too severe. Helen Hancock is pronounced dead at 4:48 in the morning. Martin Griffiths is pronounced dead 7 minutes later at 4:55. The question that haunts everyone who studies this case is simple and terrible. Could this have been prevented? Helen had called the police before. She had reported domestic incidents. Rhys was on bail at the time of the murders, supposedly being monitored, supposedly restricted in his contact with Helen. But none of those measures stopped him from driving to her house in the early hours of New Year's Day. None of those measures prevented him from entering through an unlocked door. None of those measures saved Helen Hancock and Martin Griffiths from a man who had decided that their deaths were an acceptable price for his wounded pride. The legal proceedings against Rhys Hancock move with unusual speed, perhaps because there is no ambiguity about what happened, no question of identity or intent that requires lengthy investigation. He is charged with 2 counts of murder on January 2nd, just hours after the killings. His first court appearance takes place on January 3rd at Southern Derbyshire Magistrates Court, where he appears via video link and is remanded in custody. The magistrates send the case immediately to Derby Crown Court, recognizing that this is a matter of the utmost seriousness that requires the full weight of the justice system. On January 6th, Rhys appears at Derby Crown Court for a preliminary hearing. He does not enter a plea at this stage. His legal team needs time to review the evidence, to consult with their client, to determine what defense strategy, if any, might be available. Judge Nirmal Shant QC sets a provisional trial date for August 24th, the year 2020, giving both prosecution and defense several months to prepare their cases. But everyone in the courtroom understands that this case is unlikely to go to trial. The evidence is overwhelming, the confession immediate and unambiguous. The only real question is whether Rhys will plead guilty and accept responsibility, or whether he will force Helen's and Martin's families to endure the trauma of a full trial. In July the year 2020, 6 months after the murders, Rhys Hancock makes his decision. He instructs his legal team to enter guilty pleas to both counts of murder. It's a decision that spares the families the ordeal of a trial, but it also raises questions about his motivations. Is this genuine remorse, a recognition of the horror of what he has done? Or is it simply pragmatism, an acknowledgement that no jury would ever acquit him given the evidence? His defense counsel will later argue that Rhys is deeply aware of the damage his actions have caused, particularly to his own children, who have lost their mother because of what their father did. But awareness is not the same as remorse, and many who follow the case remain skeptical about whether Rhys truly grasps the magnitude of his crimes. The sentencing hearing takes place on October 1st, the year 2020, at Derby Crown Court. It's a proceeding that draws significant media attention, not just because of the brutality of the crimes, but because it represents a test of how seriously the UK justice system takes domestic homicide. Prosecutor Michael Orty QC presents the case with devastating clarity. He describes the attack as premeditated, savage, and merciless. He argues that there are elements of sadism in the sheer number of injuries inflicted. He emphasizes that Rhys's intention was always and only to kill, that this was not a crime of passion but rather murder committed in the coldest of blood. The defense, led by Clive Stockwell QC, faces an almost impossible task. How do you defend the indefensible? How do you ask for leniency for someone who committed such calculated and brutal murders? Stockwell focuses on Rhys's mental health history, on the trauma he experienced in the year 2009, on his struggles with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. He argues that Rhys's entire adult life had been dedicated to his wife and children, that the breakdown of his marriage and the presence of another man in his former home triggered a psychological crisis that he was unable to manage. He emphasizes that Rhys is very much alive to the fact that his actions have damaged many lives, particularly those of his own children, who will grow up knowing what their father did. But Judge Nirmal Shant QC is unmoved by these arguments. In her sentencing remarks, she makes clear that while she has considered Rhys's mental health history and his guilty plea, these factors cannot outweigh the severity of his crimes. She describes the attack as substantially premeditated and pre-planned, noting that Rhys had settled on his intent to kill both victims before he left his mother's house. She emphasizes that he had multiple opportunities to change his mind, to turn back, to choose a different path, but he continued forward with his plan regardless. Judge Shant considers whether this case warrants a whole life order, the most severe sentence available in UK law, reserved for the most heinous crimes, meaning that Rhys would never be eligible for parole and would die in prison. She acknowledges that this is a borderline case, that the level of violence and premeditation could potentially justify such a sentence. But ultimately, she decides that she cannot be certain the attack was sadistic or sexual in nature, which are typically the criteria for whole life orders in domestic homicide cases. Instead, she sentences Rhys Hancock to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 31 years. This means that Rhys will not be eligible to apply for parole until the year 2051, when he will be 71 years old. Even then, parole is not guaranteed. He will have to demonstrate to the parole board that he no longer poses a risk to the public, that he has engaged meaningfully with rehabilitation programs, that he has developed genuine insight into his offending behavior. Given the nature of his crimes and the lack of apparent remorse he has shown, many observers believe he will never be released, that he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Stanton Vale School, where Rhys worked, faces its own reckoning. How do you explain to vulnerable children with special educational needs that their head teacher has been arrested for murder? How do you maintain stability and trust when the person who was supposed to be a pillar of safety has committed such violence? The school issues a brief statement expressing shock and sadness, then focuses on supporting students and staff through the transition to new leadership. Many parents who trusted Rhys with their children feel betrayed, questioning whether there were warning signs they missed, or whether their children were ever truly safe in his care. The murder of Helen Hancock and Martin Griffiths forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about domestic violence, control, and the limitations of the systems we have built to protect victims. This is not a case where we can point to one clear failure, one obvious moment where intervention would have prevented tragedy. Instead, it's a case where multiple small failures accumulated into a catastrophic outcome, where warning signs were present but not adequately heeded, where a woman did everything she was supposed to do and still ended up dead. Finally, we must ask ourselves what we would do if we suspected someone we knew was in danger. Would we speak up? Would we offer help? Would we believe them if they told us they were afraid? Or would we, like so many people do, assume that it's not our business, that they must be exaggerating, that surely it can't be that bad? Helen's friends saw warning signs. They noticed changes in her behavior. They heard about arguments. But like most people, they probably didn't fully grasp the danger until it was too late. We all have a responsibility to educate ourselves about the signs of domestic abuse, to believe victims when they tell us they're afraid, and to support them in whatever way we can. Thank you for staying with us through this difficult story. Cases like this one are never easy to hear about, but they're important to understand because they reveal truths about domestic violence that we cannot afford to ignore. Helen Hancock and Martin Griffiths were real people with families who loved them, with children who needed them, with futures that were stolen from them by someone who believed that control mattered more than life. If this case has affected you, if it's made you think about someone you know who might be in danger, please don't stay silent. In the UK, you can contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline at 0808 200 0247. It's free, confidential, and available 24 hours a day. If you're worried about someone else, you can call too. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply let someone know that we see them, that we believe them, that we're here to help. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. What do you think could have been done differently? How can we as a society better protect people who are trying to leave dangerous relationships? What responsibility do we have when we see warning signs in people around us? Share your thoughts in the comments. This channel is a community, and your perspectives matter. Let's have a respectful, thoughtful conversation about how we can prevent tragedies like this one. If you found this video informative, please consider giving it a like. It helps more people find this content and learn about these important issues. And if you're not already subscribed, we'd be honored to have you join our community. We cover cases from across the UK, always with respect for the victims and a commitment to understanding the broader social issues these tragedies reveal. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Share this video with someone who might benefit from hearing Helen's story. Domestic violence affects people in every community, every social class, every demographic. The more we talk about it openly, the more we educate ourselves and others, the better equipped we are to recognize danger and respond effectively. You might save a life simply by sharing information. Before you go, take a moment to think about Helen's children, about Martin's children, about all the children who lose parents to domestic violence every year. They didn't choose this. They didn't deserve this. And they need us as a society to do better, to create systems that protect their parents, to build communities where violence is not tolerated, to offer support and resources that help families heal. If this case has moved you, consider donating to domestic violence charities, volunteering your time, or simply educating yourself further about how to recognize and respond to abuse. Thank you for watching, for caring, for being part of a community that believes these stories matter. Helen Hancock and Martin Griffiths mattered. Their lives had value. Their deaths were not inevitable. And by remembering them, by learning from their tragedy, we honor their memory and work toward a future where fewer families have to endure this kind of loss. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you in the next video.